Assalamu everybody, my name is Rahim and welcome to Muslim React, where we react to everything and anything Muslim. Today I'll be reacting to a video titled I Was a Gay Muslim Until Jesus Did This. So to begin with, I don't know if you can be Muslim and gay, probably. I guess so, but it's confusing. Like, how you gonna come out and say that I was gay and Muslim? Was it like an openly gay Muslim, or how does that even work? Because it's haram. It's forbidden to begin with. Alright, so let's just jump into the video and check out what the video is all about.
Well, I go back to my dorm room and I have a dream. In the dream, I am asleep, but I'm waking up and I'm fighting for my life. I remember trying to call out for my best friends. I remember trying to call out for my mom, my dad, all the people who meant so much to me. Tried to dial a person who was a spiritual director for me at the time, an imam, and the phone melted in my hand. And then I just remember calling on their names and not having any other choice but to call on Jesus' name. And I said, Jesus, 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 and immediately that stronghold was broken. And I remember waking up, this is in my dorm room, I woke up, I'm by myself. This is not like at a church service. It's not a high moment where people are speaking in tongues or praying over you. I throw on my light and I throw up my hands and I say, God, you've got it. Like whatever it is that you want to do with me, whatever it is you're doing right now, you've got it.
Hey Donovan, welcome to Delafay Testimonies. For the people who don't know you, could you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Donovan Archie. I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan as a non-Christian and moved to Alabama, became a Christian. I met my wife there. We moved to this area to lead in church, to lead in ministry, and just to see more of what God is doing in our lives. I am a creator at heart. I'm a dancer at heart. But before that, most of all, I'm a husband. I'm a dad. And above all, I'm a Christian, a person just who loves God and just want to see the glory of God shown in my family's life and in the world.
Donovan, what is your testimony of Jesus?
So it began when I was younger and into adolescence. I grew up in a household where we were not churched at all. We were not churchgoers. We were not Christians. And so a lot of our identity was kind of left up to ourselves. My mom and dad, they taught us how to be good people. They taught us how to conduct ourselves, how to be respectful, how to be good people in the world. And that was great. That was fantastic. And instead of teaching us or helping us to understand who we were or who we're supposed to be as people, they taught us how we were supposed to be. And so most of understanding who I am as a person was left up to me and left up to me trying to figure out in my own life. From childhood to adolescence, it was me left to my own devices, trying to figure out who I am. I had known for many years since childhood that I was same-sex attracted. I had known that at some point in my life, I would explore the lifestyle of homosexuality. It was confirmed to me through people who would pick on me throughout my years in elementary school, high school, everywhere. But then it would also be people who would encourage me into those particular lifestyles or into that identity. I would even ask questions about who God was in relationship to my identity. And so I was left to figure out in this weird space between childhood and identity, who am I? And if the world says that I'm this way, then I must be this. Or this is an identity that I have to take upon myself and that I have to own and that I have to live into and is not explored yet. So it was really leaning into that and accepting that. And then not really knowing or in my life, hearing who God is and who God really wanted me to be. So really being confused about who God is too. And so because we lived in a superstitious household, a non-religious household, God was many things. God was the lottery. God was going to church on Easter and Sunday, but not really, in everyday life, living out this faith that was a meaningful part of our lives or a meaningful part of our identity. There was no shaping, there was no Christian formation, nothing, right? And on top of that, it was a dad who believed deeply that he was Muslim and Islamic. And so for me, because I believe those two things, well, if my dad is Islamic and is Muslim, then I guess I am too. This is a part of myself that I have to accept. And if being same-sex attracted and really wanting later in life to explore the lifestyle of homosexuality is a part of what's going to be my life, then this is who I am. I'm a Muslim gay guy who has no clue who he is in the world and is still lost and broken.
So as you got older and you took on these identities, what made you kind of fall deeper into this lifestyle?
What made me fall deeper was my friend group. I was encouraged to lean into who I was. I remember there was a friend, her mom had encouraged me. She said, after I had told her that I was struggling with this type of lifestyle, I remember vividly her telling me, well, I don't think that God would make a gay boy and not let him into heaven. And so for me, that was all game. I was like, well, I can be who I am. I can be what I am. I can be what the world is saying that I am. And that's no problem. I can live into that. I can lean into that. God accepts me as how I am and as how I'm showing up. But then after that, a few weeks later, I began to wrestle with that because I'm thinking, well, God, I have these desires, but yet I feel this conflict in my heart about how I'm feeling about you. I feel this way, but I also feel this really strange way. Later in life, I realized that there was a struggle between what was a spiritual battle that I was experiencing and this kind of carnal, fleshly battle that I was experiencing too. And they were at war with each other. The identities were just at war. But I leaned all the way into the lifestyle. I did. From hanging out in bars and clubs as a teenager, right? From actually practicing homosexuality open, from participating in pride parades and going to open forums where the lifestyle was encouraged. I leaned fully into it because I was encouraged to be prideful of my identity, and I was.
So what began to change your heart towards God or towards Jesus?
Yeah. Man, what a great question. It was in college. So this is like coming out of adolescence. It was me going to church one day. I hadn't been to church in years. This is now my junior year of college. I'm in Alabama. I should also mention that I grew up as a professional dancer. So I danced professionally doing ballet and modern dance. Got talked about a lot, but I loved what I did. And that had been made known to a person who wanted me to come to their church and dance. And I told them, well, don't expect me to become a Christian or anything like that, or pray, or to do anything else that y'all do in church, because at that time I identified as Muslim, as Islamic. But then I also had these struggles with my identity and sexuality. And so I didn't want them to preach to me or to pray for me or anything. I just wanted to go there and dance. So I was invited to dance at a church. And as I'm waiting my turn to dance, I hear this message that the pastor is preaching at the time. And the message is restoration of the gatekeepers. And the pastor is talking about how God is calling people back to God's self and is beginning to restore people who has God's name. Like God is actively looking for people to respond to his love in the world. Like God is after our hearts and is calling for people who are gatekeepers in his kingdom, people who are prophet, priest, right? In his kingdom, people are going to spread the message about who God is and what he's doing in the world. He's restoring them and he's bringing them out of dark places. He's providing for them this lifestyle of transformation. And it intrigued me a little bit, but I still wasn't ready to experience Jesus yet. I, in fact, was highly against it, highly against it. Well, I go back to my dorm room and I have a dream. And in the dream, I am asleep, but I'm waking up and I'm fighting for my life. This is while I'm still asleep. And I'm fighting for my life, and there are loud noises going off. There are sirens going off. The room heats up. My eyes go red. I can't see anything but red. And I remember trying to call out for my best friends. I remember trying to call out for my mom, my dad, all the people who meant so much to me, for who I thought could provide me help in the time. Tried to dial a person who was a spiritual director for me at the time, an imam, and the phone melted in my hand. And then I just remember calling on their names and not having any other choice but to call on Jesus' name. And I said, Jesus, 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 Jesus. And immediately that stronghold was broken. And I remember waking up. This is in my dorm room. I woke up. I'm by myself. This is not like at a church service. It's not a high moment where people are speaking in tongues or, praying over you. It's me by myself and the experience I had with God in my dream. I throw on my light and I throw up my hands and I say, God, you've got it. Like whatever it is that you want to do with me, whatever it is you're doing right now, you've got it. But I clearly heard God say in that moment, and this was the first time that I had ever heard the voice of God. Truly, like deep down in my heart, the first time I truly felt like I heard the voice of God. God spoke to me and said that I'm restoring you and the strongholds are broken. And for me, that was groundbreaking. That was groundbreaking for my life, because the stronghold of identity that I felt I had on my life, with my sexuality, with who I felt I was in the world, who I felt I was just really in myself, all these identities that I tried to cling on to, they didn't serve me anymore. And not only did not serve me, but they were in fact creating a stronghold for me to really learn and know who I was in God. And it was in that moment where I knew, like, God, if you're removing strongholds and it's just starting with my identity, I can only imagine what other strongholds there are that you're wanting to break free from.
Now, Donovan, this is a really powerful encounter that you're having, but tell me more about what it felt like being a gay man who was also a practicing Muslim. How did Jesus come into this picture? Like, how did that make sense in your head? Did it make sense for you?
Yeah. It didn't make sense to me. I struggled with it. I could not, as a person who was homosexual, as a person who was gay, live a openly gay lifestyle with these also thoughts of hate from God. These thoughts of, well, God hates me, but it's still that thought of, well, could God really love a person like me? The world says that I'm loved. So I guess I am loved, but still just this contention, just this conflict in my heart of God hates me, that God really wants for me to change. And being Islamic, what intrigued me more as a gay person, as a person who's struggling with his identity, was the fact that I could do works, right? I could do things to try and get into the presence of God, that I could try to facilitate my way to get God to accept me and love me. And I found no avail in it. I found no satisfaction. There was no deep feeling or deep conviction about who God was as I was practicing Islam, as a gay person. There was no change in my heart. It was just me living my lifestyle and me performing for God. I oftentimes think of a dog that I once had, and my dog would perform to get treats. And I remember the moment in my faith where I felt like that, where I felt like I was performing for a God who either cared or did not care about who I was as a person. And then Jesus came in and redeemed me from my identity, or from my identities, with multiple identities, and then just showed me a different path. So that difference was having to perform for a God that was almost non-existent. It was all based off of what I could do myself. But then God really put in me in relationship with Jesus, who was revealed to me as the true God, the God who actually wanted my heart and wanted to do some real stuff with me.
So now you've had this encounter, you have had this moment of surrender where you're like, God, you've got it. What happened next?
Oh, man. From that very moment, I remember packing up almost half of my dorm room because it was pride flags and it was Islamic prayer plaques and it was a prayer rug that I would pray on 5 times a day. I remember packing all that stuff up, walking it off campus and throwing it in the dumpster behind a gas station. And I remember holding on to the to the trash can. And before I let go, I said, God, when I let go of this trash can, it's got to be you. It's got to be you from here on out because I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. I know that I heard you clearly say that you want to restore me, that you want to change me, and that the strongholds are broken. So you've got to take the leadership from here on because I don't know what to do. I let go of the trash can and I marched in the other direction. And I found a friend who was headed to Bible study and invited me to Bible study. Like, how does that happen? Invited me to Bible study and said, hey, we're just going, it's a couple of friends. We're going to get together and just chop it up about scripture and what God is calling us to be in the world. And God is shaping our identities. And I'm like, I think I'm struggling with a little bit of that. And so it was just finding a community, some friends who really knew God in a real way and connecting with them and then going deeper with them, discipling with them. I was becoming a disciple and I didn't know that I was being discipled, but it was having that opportunity to be pointed in a new direction with the body of people who knows the walk and who know Jesus and can help keep introducing me to Jesus and helping me grow in my relationship with Jesus and kind of facilitate that process. And from there was just this beautiful process of maturity that I never wanted to break away from.
So, can you walk us through how the Lord began to restructure your view on your own identity? How did he begin to take you from a man who identified as gay to somebody who didn't? Or are you still in that process, or how did you get removed from that process?
Oh man, what a great question. Half and half. It's half and half, right? We are constantly growing in grace and are being perfected daily, right? Scripture tells us to be perfect, for our Father in heaven is perfect, and that's a journey. And but it starts somewhere, right? For me, I remember the moment. For the moment I decided to lean into that process, I heard a scripture. It was Romans 12:1. And that scripture for me was groundbreaking because it talked about not being conformed to the ways of the world, to the world at all, but being transformed. And I remember asking myself, well, how do I do that? Like, how do I be transformed? And it was by the renewing of our mind. And I knew that my mind needed to be renewed to shape further who I was in my mind, in my spirit, in my body, because I knew that me and lots of people were experiencing identity crisis. And I wanted to figure that thing out. I wanted to be clear in my life. I wanted to be guilt-free. I wanted to live completely before God. And so for me, it was constantly leaning into what it means to be transformed and what it means to be renewed daily and then not conformed to the world. So, yeah. Did I answer your question?
Yes. So, can you take us through some of the things that the Lord just began to do in your life after you surrendered and repented and gave your life to Jesus?
Yeah. Lots of things. So, number one, God gave me a hunger and a thirst for Him. Most importantly, it was God really putting me in this space where it was just God and I, just He and I, being able to be in union and communion together in a way that was unbreachable by anything else, in a way where it was only God's voice that was the loudest voice in my life, because I knew that I was susceptible to many other voices that would inform my process of growth. Because it happened to me before, all the voices that informed my process and my style of living. And it was God just saying, no, it's going to be you and I for a while, and it's going to be lonely, and it's going to be hard, but you're going to come out gold. It's going to be, you're going to be so incredible.
Okay, so I'm not gonna watch the whole video. But first, to begin with, he's saying he was a gay Muslim, a practicing Muslim, according to him. But everyone knows no Muslim person can call themselves an Islamic man, right? So probably this is just one of the guys who just looked at Islam and said, "Yeah, I'm a Muslim," and he's saying I was practicing Muslim. How you gonna be practicing Muslim and you're keeping the LGBTQ flags together with Islam? Secondly, he said he had a dream which made him convert to Christianity. I think I did another video which talked about a dream also. There's no real reason to why someone would say I prefer Christianity to Islam. In his dream, he says he called out to his dad, the mom, and the imam, right? Imam as he pronounces it himself. But here's the thing: how does a Muslim call to an imam instead of calling out to Allah? If you're really in trouble, everyone knows that you call to Allah, not to an imam. Yeah. So this whole story of him being called, I don't know why they've even labeled this gay Muslim. I think it's just clickbait to make people feel as if he was a practicing Muslim when in essence this guy wasn't a Muslim. Probably never even did his Shahada. It's just one of those people just say I'm Muslim without knowing anything about it. And he says he felt like he felt like a dog who's just given, expecting to get something in return. Obviously, every time when you pray, you expect to get something in return. What is God going to get from us? He's acting as if this is an exchange. Prayer to God is because we always expect something from Him because He's the giver. Right? So this whole story about him being Muslim is false, obviously, because clearly anyone can see he's not Muslim. He kept on calling himself an Islamic man. Like this guy doesn't even know what he's talking about. So he was gay, he's no longer gay. I don't know how the story ended. He's now changed apparently. You know. Yeah, so this is from a channel called Tilafi Testimonies. I don't know what this is about, but his story about him being Muslim is not true. Alright, so this has been Muslim React. We react to everything and anything Muslim. Until next time, inshallah. Peace.